Hey guys, my name is VaulSC. Hope that you are doing well. Happy New Year for 2024. Hope you're playing a lot of games of Conquest like I am, Last Argument of Kings. Wanted to bring you this one because it's a game against Nords. Only a couple of Nords players in our local meta, but they haven't been playing very much. They haven't had a real chance to get to grips with the Nordic faction, the Skyrim faction, as I like to call them, because they really make me think of a lot of the stuff to do with the beloved Bethesda game. More about that another time. This is going to be a list where I try out the Steel Legion, a new regiment that I've been painting up lately, and my opponent just bringing to the field the stuff that he can get. So why don't we just launch into the army lists. So right here I've got Imperial Officer as always, Ranger Corps, I really love them. The idea is for him to start out with them and then seek new escort over to the Steel Legion. That's why I've actually pimped him out a bit more with Armor of Dominion. And he's got the one that gives Bastion, which can be useful rather than the Fire in Advance for the Imperial Ranger Corps. So Armor of Dominion, just talking about that real quick. So Armor of Dominion is quite a powerful item potentially. It means that any stands in contact with your character lose Cleave and Smite and Brutal Impact. Let me just double check the rules on that. Pretty sure that's how it works. Yep, in fact they don't lose Brutal Impact, so you've got to be careful of that. It can be very, very strong. So if you're in a situation where you've got Bastion on your Steel Legion, you charge in the defense 4, your opponent's got Cleave 2 or 3 or something like that, and they try and attack back if they're using the new Siegebreaker Behemoth that loses Smite. It's just, it can be game winning. But there are also going to be some games where it does absolutely nothing. And you've got to be careful about your formation too, because your opponent can still make contact with your unit and still have maybe 1 or 2 stands that are in contact with Steel Legion stands that are not touching the officer. It's also a bit problematic sometimes when you're getting into situations where you're killing the enemy regiment you're facing and you're stuck on one part of the battlefield and you're not really getting to grips with the true threat, the real target of your regiment, and that's where 40 points can feel like it's a little bit wasted. So trying it out this game, but I've always been a little bit skeptical of the item overall. Priory Command Order the Sword. It occurred to me recently that you can put Arcane 1 on your retinue here. Of course, he doesn't have any spells. He can't really use his wizard ability, but it gives spell interference. So for that 20 points, you've got spell interference there, but more importantly, allows you to take Elysian Fragment. So all of these Order the Sword guys get Smite for 1 turn. Just like the Militia with the Theist Priest, it can be a little bit slow tempo to set up because you've got to draw the character card first, then your unit might take a beating, and then you can finally make your attack with Smite. The difference being that I think the Order of the Sword obviously are much more resilient than Militia, and they are usually the regiment that are going to be right in the middle of the battlefield, taking on the toughest enemy opponents. And that's where having 1 turn with Smite can really punish your opponent for charging you with heavy cavalry or something like that, or having a big monster there. So it's something I've always been wanting to try out. It does mean that you having to spend a fair bit of points on it, and you're not kitting the Priory Commander out with much else. So I don't know if it's optimal. I think Elysian Fragment on the Militia with the Theist Priest is something where you're going to be wanting to take the Militia anyway to just camp an objective and have the priest sitting on it there for you, and they're quite cheap, and then they become very, very powerful if your opponent threatens them with something a bit bigger. So I find them very, very efficient and effective, and I just don't know if that's going to be the same with the Order of the Sword combo. Lastly, I'm just putting in the Mounted Noble Lord, because I just wanted to round out the list with a lot of other cheap troops. So everything else here doesn't really hit very hard. The Longbowmen are kind of nice to have at the back when you've got so many other screening units. Men-at-Arms, just because I thought I wanted 1 more extra scoring unit just in case. The Lord himself isn't actually kitted out for buffing the Knights. The Knights are not veterans. They've got no Oliphant's Roar. They won't do a lot of damage when they charge, but the Noble Lord is kitted out to be a duelist with Caledburn and Disorienting Strike. So the idea there is that maybe I can actually march and then charge and hit an enemy regiment with a character in it and then duel them. So that could be a way to do it. Otherwise, you know, the Knights and the Lord themselves aren't super expensive and can just like hold up a flank or do a bit of scoring or just do a cheeky sort of charge and get in the way. So that's how we're going to roll it. Right, so for these Nords, my opponent really just trying to bring to the battlefield all the stuff that he's collected. He's only just recently managed to get to 2,000 points. So I'm not too sure what he actually did take. I've got this list to 920, just reenacting sort of what he took. But even then, he's got all fed now with like 2 officers and a standard bearer. He's got the shaman with a few bits of kit here. I just don't know. Yeah, I remember he took the captain and the shield blighter. I just don't know what other stuff he spent points on to get up to 2,000. So I'll have to ask him. But I know that the list was a bit bigger than that. I think the Jarl had about 80 points worth of items in there as well. Either way, it's really a lot better if you can just dial back the upgrades a little bit and put 1 more regiment in there. That would have been the better way to go, in my view, with this sort of Nords list. But again, if you don't have access to the miniatures, that's where it can be a bit tricky. Alright, so the mission we're going to be playing here was Echelon, if I recall correctly. That's where, if I just grab a photo of it actually, there's the opponent there. But if you have a look at these 2 circular zones, why don't I just take a second to grab my... can't remember where I put it, sorry. Anyway, there are 4 objectives throughout the battlefield as well that you can destroy. You can't destroy the one that's closest to you. So this furthest one on the other side of the battlefield for my opponent, that's something that I'll be going after if, for example, I cleared up one flank and I had a breakthrough unit to get around to the back side. It is in the missions pack booklet though, so you're welcome to have a look at it. I've played in this mission several times before, and I think it's quite a good one. There's 2 large zones, and one of them is closer to your side than the opponent's side. We've also got a couple of hills with forests on them, and then these other 2 here are just regular forests. So starting out, my light units include, well, the ones that are appearing on the table are the Imperial officer in the ranges, along with the Longbowmen, and the Mercenary Crossbowmen aren't really making it. So we've got the Longbowmen moving up here to start shooting at one of the objectives on my side of the table. On the right-hand side, the Rangers moving up with the Imperial officer using Vanguard and their standard to get just into contact with that zone there. Opponent bringing on his shaman with the very wide-eyed raiders, looking good. My opponent just getting started with painting his army. It's already looking pretty cool. The blooded appearing on this other side with the bow chosen. Now the blooded is actually going to be the warlord for this. Normally it's the shaman, but he's taken the blooded, going for call of the hunt, so he can always choose 2 regiments to arrive automatically. If you're going to go with that warlord ability, I do prefer it when you have lots of units, and especially units that are medium and heavy, because then you can make the most of bringing them on really, really early. That's my take on it. So turn 2, I've now picked up from left to right Imperial officer with the noble lord on the mounted noble lord, that is the Priory commander. Then there's the Longbowmen, Mercenary Crossbowmen, Ranger, Order of the Sword, and Knights. Just using the Knights last because I want to see where he deploys a lot of his troops, and then bring in the Knights lastly to see if I can get a cheeky charge in turn 2. Nice close-up here of the Shaman. He's casting some sort of spell, making it harder for me to charge his unit, but that's not really going to affect the game very much. He does have Sacrificial Lamb as well, so once he dies, everything else gets blessed for the rest of the turn. So they'll be just charging this objective in front of them and just whacking it with their axes and what they do just to try and grind it down. Bit more of a brighter photo here. The Longbowmen now shooting at my objective here in turn 2 just to wither it down, take a wound off it, so they can eventually kill it. They're worth 3 points each. Trolls appearing right behind the Raiders. I was explaining to this player that the way I like to do Nords is to bring in the brick of Trolls in turn 2 and already to have a character nearby that you can seek new escort over to the Trolls, and that way you can use any gear on them to keep them alive. So for example, if you move the Shaman over to them, then he can use the Tenacious on the Trolls, which is really nice, or preferably the Koninger to have Resolve 5 on them, and Tactical 1, and then being just a really, really good duelist with a lot of damage output from the front. Mercenary Crossbowmen appearing now just to get some additional shooting onto that objective on the left, and then once they're free, they can shoot to either side of that house. Ulfednar appearing. Ulfednar are a bit of a maligned unit at the moment. They, unfortunately, are very, very expensive, and they're very flimsy. So with only 4 wounds, defense 2, they're very vulnerable to shooting and to magic. If they can get into close combat, yes, they have 8 attacks, and yes, they've got Flurry, well, Blessed, I should say. But, yeah, it's just getting there that's the problem. Bloodlust can be a little bit problematic. What you want to do is use the Shaman to vanguard them up, or even get a flank charge where you move on for free from the side of the table, charge, and then clash and get a lot of damage done. But lastly, they don't have cleave, so even with 8 attacks, if they're up against defense 4 or anything with like Blessed, they're not going to get very much done. Whereas the Bear Sarks do have, they've got less attacks, but they do have cleave, and I think that really makes the difference. But he's trying them. So over here, we just have the Rangers just standing still, really. They just need to camp there and take the objective one more time with the Imperial officer there. So just a few Stalkers moving up now. They will also be able to shoot at this objective and help to destroy it very, very quickly. I now have the Order of the Sword moving up in a big, long row. They're not deciding to rank up with back ranks. They're just spreading out one big, long line. And it will be their job to take the brunt of the Nord charge through the middle there. And they'll be planning on doing that with the help of the Supremacy turn where they get Blessed. So even against Cleave, coming down to Defense 2, they are re-rolling everything and then counterattacking everything. And then I can, you know, get beaten up a little bit and then reinforce them with the Steel Legion later on. But the idea here is for them to be charged by something that they can use the Elysian Fragment on. Nords maybe not the best opponent this particular game because they don't have a lot of tough stuff out there. But if you're playing like Old Dominion with Praetorian Guards or Cataphracts or something like that, then Elysian Fragment can be extremely deadly. Or Dwergum for that matter, I should say. So the Bowchosen now moving the Blooded onto the objective to score some points. They're not in range of the objective because the objective requires you to be at half range. So although they would normally be in range there, they can't quite shoot that objective. And the wounds are tracked separately as well. So if I do 2 wounds on it and he does a 3rd one, it's not going to kill it. It's just going to start a new tracker of 1 wound for his scoring purposes. So now that I see where the Bowchosen are, my last regiment can be the Knights, marching onto this forest hill here. Really love this position because the Knights can't really do much damage when they charge because they're so pathetic at Clash 2 and, you know, no other bonuses and no other investment in them. So charging out of the forest will remove their impact hits anyway, but the point is not to damage the Bowchosen. It is just to charge into them, have my Lord duel the Blooded, and just get in their way, and just wait and wait and wait and wait, and eventually the Ashen Dawn will show up and pick this flank off. And I also have a lot of shooters like the Longbowmen to shoot into combat and everything, so they're really just a delaying tactic, but this forest will allow me to get there without getting shot up by the Bowchosen too badly. Turn 3. So Rangers will activate to the first as the first card. The reason for that is that they need to get their free reform to turn around and then march back behind the Order of the Sword, who are currently sitting right behind them. And then it's going to be a matter of firing with the Longbowmen and the Mercenary Crossbowmen to pick off the objective, and then just activating my character cards through the middle and bringing in the more important troops later on. And hopefully with the Knights going last, they can actually wait until the Bowchosen have done their activation and then march, charge, and get into combat with them. So this is what the turn looks like, start of turn 3. You can see a lot of Nord infantry massing up at the top right there, going for my objective, which is now being defended by the Order of the Sword. To the left, he only has the Bowchosen, so if I tie them up in combat with my Knights and then shoot into combat with the Longbowmen using Arcane Fire, I should be able to beat them up quite tightly. That's going to start forcing him to start deploying things on the left-hand side, maybe the Ogres or the Fen Beasts or the Giant, and that's when my Ashen Dawn and Men-at-Arms can come over there to answer them. Or alternatively, I can just deploy all that other stuff on the right-hand flank and just swamp one flank completely. So, I get first the Rangers turn around with the Imperial officer and march back behind the Order of the Sword, as we can see here. The Longbowmen are now shooting possibly at the Bowchosen just to do a little bit of damage there, or the objective, can't remember which. The Jarl has arrived on the battlefield with the Ulfednar, so that's what he's doing now, is he's using Seek New Escort to move over to the trolls, as you can see right here on the left. The Mercenary Crossbowmen can now shoot at the objective, do another point of damage to it, and the Bow Chosen could also move up. Actually, I think the Mercenary Crossbowmen may well have been shooting at the Bow Chosen. Yeah, so I didn't actually fire at the objective at all this turn. The Longbowmen and the Mercenaries both went into the Bow Chosen, killing one stand, just putting that bit of extra pressure on them. But the Bow Chosen unfortunately move up, shoot the Longbowmen, and then pull back with fire in advance, which does delete one of my stands. He's now moving forward with the Raiders and the Shaman, just to get into charge range of my guys. And my Order of the Sword moving up to meet the threat. So it's important for them to be here. They want to start scoring. I need points off that zone for a while. And I want him to start throwing things at my unit. There's still no need to use the Supremacy ability. Raiders aren't going to hurt me very much. They've got no cleave. I've got Defense 3 with counterattack and 5 wounds and really, really good resolve. So I'm not too worried about them. The Ulfedna, for some reason, just turning around a little bit and considering a potential move to the right-hand side of the battlefield where the knights are. So that's interesting. He could have gone after the Order of the Sword, but he feels like the trolls and the stalkers are enough to do that. So just rerouting them a little bit, but remember they've got bloodlust, so if they fail a roll, they've got to sort of start moving towards the closest enemy unit they can see, or something to that effect. It may not be that exact wording. So the Steel Legion arrive. This is a unit that I've just freshly bought and pulled out of the box and assembled and painted. They are about halfway done. I still have a lot of highlighting and stuff to do, but as you can see there, the blue is starting to build up, and I've started to block in a few other little colors there. I've actually put a little bit of a metallic color on the cloth of their hand wrappings, which is a bit weird, but if you can imagine some sort of special silky kind of fabric that has a bit of specular intensity to it, that's sort of what I've gone for, but I'm still going to dull it down quite a bit with more washes. So they're coming in behind the Order of the Sword, or should I say to the side of them. If you look at this photo carefully, you can see the right-hand side stand of the Order of the Sword there. That's going to die off pretty quick, and it's going to create room for the Steel Legion to move past them. Trolls now moving up behind the Raiders. They're still not quite camping my objective just yet, so they're just getting ready for the inevitable melee. We then have Seek New Escort from the Imperial officer coming over to the Steel Legion. This is important because he gives them Bastion and he has Armor of Dominion. Not that I'm going to be up against a much cleave this particular game, but usually if you have an opponent with a lot of cleave and you throw your Steel Legion in there with Defense 4 from Bastion, that Armor of Dominion can be very, very powerful. Now the Ashen Dawner arrive. Unfortunately, I managed to leave one of their bases at home, so you can see the standard bearer with his like First Blood circular stand in the middle of that. No way around that. I just forgot the piece of plastic that he's supposed to be standing on. But the crucial thing here is that my opponent's going to need a lot of stuff to stop 4 stands of Ashen Dawn just winning over that particular objective. So he's going to have to commit his giant now and his augurs, and they're his best bet. The Bow Chosen are the best thing that he could possibly use to kill the knights, because he can do that at long range with, you know, ones causing an instant wound, and Blessed can't be used against shooting. But the problem for that strategy is that the knights are about to get in their way, so that's going to buy the Ashen Dawn time to get in there and then just clobber any of his regiments, hopefully. So here it comes. The knights march up and then they charge quite easily through the forest. They do no impact hits at all, but they're now sort of camping this objective and almost sort of contesting it, really, because he's got his blooded there. So you'll need more regiments to come on and continue the scoring on his side. And that's why he brings on his Jotnar. So the Jotnar marches 7+7, and it counts as 3 stands for the purpose of scoring. So that's what's going to allow him to continue putting points on the board. And he is a little bit further ahead than me because he's killed more objectives. But yeah, it doesn't mean that he's committed. And the Jotnar won't be able to charge initially because there's a bit of a traffic jam here. The knights aren't doing any damage to the Bow Chosen, so they're just going to sit there. Right, so this is what things look like at the start of turn 4. You can see that in the middle, I still have 3 shooting regiments ready to actually put some pepper into them. I want to be careful about that, because if you shoot the Ulfedna and do like 1 wound, then they're just going to get more attacks when they get into combat. On the left-hand side, the Knights are happy to just like wait it out with the Bow Chosen and go against the Blooded, while the Ashen Dawn sort of just creep up and get ready for an attack. He's brought his Ogres on as well. You can see from the top left into that forest. And I still have 1 unit of Men-at-Arms to bring on. He's still got his Fenner Beasts. The Steel Legion, as you can see, are in a great position where they can potentially move past to charge the Trolls, and so long as I get 1 decent round of combat off against the Trolls, I should murder them pretty badly. It's just going to be about timing and about positioning and about the logistics of getting that right. So I'll be wanting to activate the Imperial Officer first, just so I can get Bastion going on the Steel Legion. If we just go back a card here, that's just going to allow me to get Bastion up and running. I just want him to do everything first. Like if you look at this photo, this is going to be my not my Supremacy turn, because the Raiders aren't going to be able to do enough damage to the Order of the Sword, and the Trolls aren't going to be able to reach them this turn. So next turn will be Supremacy after I've wiped out the Raiders. So this turn is just about baiting him into worse positions. And for that reason, everything is just sitting around here. Note the Noble Lord as the last card activation. That is so he can challenge the Blooded right at the end. Everything else just happening in between. So, another photo overview here. You can see that the stand on the right here for the Order of the Sword is damaged. Only 2 wounds left. So the Steel Legion could potentially creep past there later and just hit the flank of whatever's fighting the Order of the Sword. So the Raiders now charged, they just rush in, they've got Flurry, they've got everything, and they do a bunch of damage here, but just not enough. I mean, they don't have the bonus for Gift of the Ainiyar yet, so they do a little bit of damage to 1 stand, and then that's it. The Longbowmen use Arcane Fire to shoot at the objective in front there. And then we have the Bow Chosen activating. The character actually has Cleave here, so they do a fair bit of damage to the Knights, killing 1 stand and wounding another one. But the Knights are keen to just sit there and wait, to be honest. Mercenary Crossbowmen picking off the other objective, just putting another 3 points on the board for me, so that's that 1 objective in the middle there gone. The Shaman activating, not wanting to challenge here, doesn't really want to use Blessed as his Sacrificial Lamb just yet. Excuse me. But he does cast some sort of spell. Not that that really makes much difference. Okay, so we have the Rangers now just getting their Liquid Formation Reform, just moving a little bit further out of the forest and preparing to reposition for later to find out where they're going to be needed. I then have the Men-at-Arms appearing in this forest here where the Knights used to be. They're just coming around the extreme flank, just being cheeky because my opponent can't really afford to charge them, because then it gives the Ashen Dawn the chance to just charge into the flank of whatever takes this unit on. And it just allows me to screen the Ashen Dawn and get in the way and get a cheeky flank charge. And in the very late game, what can happen is that after I've wiped out this entire flank, the Men-at-Arms can quite efficiently be a scoring unit on this side while the Ashen Dawn move into the center of the table to win the game. Speaking of Ashen Dawn, they move up forward like 6 inches and then they march to the left about 3 inches. And they're just going to start creeping around and getting into a position where they are set to fight later on. My opponent sees that he's not going to be able to efficiently get the Stalkers past the Trolls because they'll just get in the way that way. So they are stalking their way around the battlefield through this column here. And that's going to allow them to start picking off some shots into the side of the Steel Legion later on, or even get a flank charge, which could be really annoying. So we'll see how they go. My turn here with the Order of the Sword Priory Commander issuing a challenge to the Shaman. He decides that he doesn't want to get broken, so the challenge goes ahead. This guy has like eccentric fighting style, so he's got like 8 attacks, so he easily kills the Shaman. And even though he has to reroll his own armor saves, the Shaman just doesn't land any hits here, so the Shaman's dead. But the entire Nord army has Blessed now, which is normally pretty crazy, but he just doesn't have many combat units left to activate. Ogre's moving up out of this forest. They are preparing to get a flank charge on the Knights. I'd love them to flank charge the Knights because it means that the Ashen Dawn just roll them, and then that's just 1 more unit down the drain. So, I mean, he's not in a bad situation given that he's still got his Giant back there and he's still scoring. But over the long term, he's going to eventually lose these units, especially since I've got my range units back there peppering away at him as well. So, the Steel Legion. with the Imperial Officer. They have double time, which is a really helpful ability, allowing them to march 3 times when they're not charging. So they come all the way around the other side. You can see that that stand of Order of the Sword to the left has taken some more wounds there, so once that disappears, there's going to be enough space between my unit on the left and that impassable terrain on the right to charge through and hit those trolls, and these big greatswords are going to make a mess of them. Speaking of trolls, they are just trying to reposition ever so slightly, making sure that they can get a charge when it's their turn once the raiders have disappeared. So with that in mind, we have the Order of the Sword here, and they don't really want to attack just yet. I considered the possibility of just like waiting so that the trolls can't actually charge them. I can't quite remember the sequence of this, but there was one point in the game where the trolls activated slightly too early, allowing me to then kill the raiders, and then of course I can use the Supremacy ability on the next turn for getting blessed onto the Order of the Sword, which is what we want. Now, trouble here. Fenner Beasts showing up on this side of the table instead of harassing the Ashen Dawn, so they could quite easily get a charge off next turn if he wins Supremacy, and that'll block the Steel Legion and delay me an entire turn, so the reinforcements won't really be there for the Order of the Sword for quite a while. Over here, the Ulfednar, looking at their position and seeing that the Bowchosen are kind of blocked off there, I deliberately refrained from attacking the Bowchosen so that this stand here wouldn't be killed, because if it had been killed, he could then charge the Ulfednar past there, or even the Giant past there, wipe out the Knights, and then free up the Bowchosen to pull back and shoot at the Ashen Dawn, and generally become a nuisance. So, because that option is not available to him because of the blockage, he decides to turn around and get ready to go after the Order of the Sword instead, which does continue to make things interesting. I do have shooting units here, but again, I'd like to wait for him to go through a round of combat before I commit that. Over here, the Knights, again, deciding not to attack. We have, I think, the Noble Lord deciding not to do anything here, or maybe he tries for the duel. Possibly being declined by the Blooded, can't quite remember. So next turn, we have the Order of the Sword needing to go first because there is a clear path between them and the Trolls. This will be the Supremacy turn because they'll really need it at this point. Then the Knights, then the Steel Legion. Ashen Dawn absolutely last after the dust has settled. They need to make sure that they can retaliate against anything that comes past. Alright, my opponent wins the Supremacy roll, very important roll. If he had not won it, it would have meant that the Order of the Sword would have gone into the Trolls and probably done a lot of damage to them, given this is the Supremacy turn. So that's pretty painful. But his Ulfednar charge in here with Bloodlust, and they have like 1 billion attacks with no cleave. So again, even though that's a lot of damage we're talking about, if we go and have a look at it, Ulfednar, so the Gothy gives them Blessed, if I recall correctly. For some reason, Army Builder's not working here. Never mind. We do know that they have 8 attacks apiece plus a leader, so that's going to be 25 attacks. Clash 2 goes up to 3 with Inspired. So with Blessed on the rerolls, you're going to be hitting 75% of 25, which it's going to be quite a bit. 17 or 18 attacks. Can't quite do the math in my head. The problem is that I'm going to block 75% of that damage with Defense 3 and rerolls, and then any of those ones are going to reflect onto the Ulfednar. So the result is not a huge amount of damage being done. I lose 2 stands, one of them had already been damaged, and I'm not broken. I'm just sitting here, and there's a way past here for the Steel Legion to charge the Trolls. And then when it's my turn to activate the Order of the Sword, they are going to be able to do a hellish amount of damage to the Ulfednar, and I have units available to shoot at them as well, like the crossbows. Unfortunately, my opponent had won the roll, so the tempo was swinging in his favor. So with the Ulfednar activating and then me going over to the Order of the Sword, he then activates his Fen Beasts. They charge the side of the Steel Legion. I don't have Bastion up and running. I've got to reroll morale checks. Luckily, they've got Oblivious. This does 1 or 2 stands worth of damage, and it's just really annoying because I can't charge the Trolls. Over here, we have the Knights attacking and doing a bit more damage here to the Bowchosen. Or at least dueling the Blooded. There's the duel there. but it doesn't quite kill either of them. They both do like 2 wounds to each other. But then the ogres get to move in and do a bit of clobbering there with their cleave too and all that, and that is enough to wipe out the knights. So the knights are finally removed. We then have the Steel Legion turning around, well, not literally combat reforming, they're just inspire clashing to wipe out the Fan Beast, so removing a flank threat. The Blooded is free now, so they are able to get a little bit of shooting done against the Ashen Dawn and able to move up in the way so that it just makes it harder for my Ashen Dawn to charge the ogres. So that's a good play. They just move up a little bit in front here and do a little bit of shooting onto the Ashen Dawn, not quite killing anything, but a few wounds inflicted. But notice here that little dice that says 2 in it to the left, that means that he's taken a couple of wounds on his Bow-Chosen stand, and the Blooded himself is damaged. So that's why I activate the Longbowmen, who get like aim volley with 2 stands onto those Blooded, and just able to pick them off since they're so badly damaged. That removes the Blooded completely and the Bow-Chosen, kills his Warlord, and the Ashen Dawn still haven't activated yet, so they can now retaliate onto the ogres. So things actually starting to fall apart on that flank. Over here, we have the trolls charging in against the Order of the Sword, and I will point out that there are still a couple of stands worth of Ulfednar in there, so they can only really charge onto the end and get 1 or 2 stands worth of trolls, plus the supporting attacks attacking there, which means that they're still not in contact with the Steel Legion. So, and also this is a reform, by the way, so the trolls actually reformed first, then charged, so they're not actually even attacking the Order of the Sword. So that's where things get interesting. It just gives me yet another opportunity to try and deal with them. Looking at this, I'm not sure what you guys make of the rules here, but it appears to me that with my Steel Legion being 3 wide at this point, I will get a flank charge when it becomes my turn to activate them next turn, if I can win that roll. Because that middle stand, more than half of the stand is in the troll's flank. Is that actually how it works? Like, is it done from his side or is it done from my side? Because when we look at his facing of his unit, it looks like the majority of my unit is in his flank. So let me know in the comments if you have a view about that. Okay, Rangers moving past the guys here, and they have Liquid Formation, so, or Loose Formation, whatever it is, so they can shoot any direction they like. So they can actually put a bunch of shots into the Ulfednar up the top right there, volley 3, and they're at close range. So peppering them with shots actually really wrecks the Ulfednar and wipes them out crazily enough, because it does a ton of damage. So they are quite flimsy. We have the Mercenary Crossbowmen just moving in behind, trying to get a couple of shots off in the distance, but not really ready to do any major damage at this point. The Stalkers move around and then charge, and this is incredibly annoying here because it delays the Steel Legion for yet another turn, so I in fact do not get the charge against the Trolls. So this does even more damage onto the Steel Legion. So that's really annoying and painful. My opponent doing a great job of harassing them, and it just gives the Trolls more time to beat down on the Order of the Sword in the middle, who have now lost their supremacy ability. Speaking of which, I'm attempting to duel the Jarl with the Priory Commander, and the Jarl realizes that he's going to be fighting a losing battle there, so he decides to decline that one. Or does he? I can't quite remember. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he declines that one. So he'll have to rally the Trolls pretty early into the piece here. Jotnar, just creeping to the side a bit more, just trying to position himself better to get that inevitable combat in with the Ashen Dawn when he's ready. Over here, the Men-at-Arms just creeping past. They know that the Ashen Dawn are about to charge the Ogres. They just want to be out of the way. They want to be able to move forward and just get that cheeky flank onto the Giant later on, or eventually move on to that objective once the Ashen Dawn are free to sweep through to the middle. Ashen Dawn, of course, just galloping in here and making an absolute mockery of these Ogres because, you know, they're, even though they don't get their impact hits here because they're going through a forest, they're like 6 attacks each plus the leader, cleave 2. The Ogres just don't stand a chance. They are absolutely deleted. Next turn, Ashen Dawn going first because if I win the roll, I can kill his Giant just for free. The Steel Legion can then wipe out the Stalkers. Order of the Sword, if they survive, can go after the Trolls, and then everything else activates after that. So that's what the battlefield looks like. You can see that it's pretty much over for the Nords here because I am likely to win the left-hand flank. I mean, if his giant charges me, it will do a bunch of damage with Cleave 2, but with Blessed going there and very high resolve, I'm not going to lose like 2 stands of guys there. I'm going to be able to attack back with like 3 stands, absolutely clobber him. I've got the shooters there as well, and that's me scoring his side of the table for the rest of the game, and that will leave me with like 3 or 4 units to go after his trolls, so it's pretty much over. I do win the roll though. The Ashen Nord march in, they wipe out the Jotnar very, very easily, even without impact hits, because there's a forest there. They're just too strong on the offense, too many attacks, the clash, and they cleave too high. So the giant goes down. The Stalkers do attack the Steel Legion and do some more damage here, but after that the Steel Legion are able to retaliate and completely delete them and wipe them out. The Trolls, able to give a bit of a beat down here to the Order of the Sword. I'm pretty sure they completely removed them here. I did a little bit of damage in return, but this is the last photo showing the Order of the Sword just being fought down here. He's able to reform to bring a few stands out here and then just bash me, so it didn't really last for too much longer. At this point though, I can turn around with my shooters. So got the Mercenary Crossbowmen reforming, shooting some pot shots. The trolls can regen all of that, but eventually, once you've got 3 or 4 units attacking them at once, they'll go down quite handily. And that's the point in the game when my opponent decided to sort of hand in the towel, and I think it was a good time to end it. We could see that the trolls weren't going to last too many more turns. There were still 3 turns left in the game, and it would have only taken me 2 turns to get into position with Ashen Dawn and then wipe them out. So, good game. My opponent, I think, still isn't quite sort of ready with his collection of miniatures to start fielding more competitive lists where, you know, it's the bulk of the list as just really well optimized troops. I also feel like the Shaman is the better choice for the Warlord, because you want to sort of get up the field very quickly with your Vanguard troops. From my side, I feel like, you know, I still haven't got to see the real value of Armor of Dominion. I know it's a very powerful item, but for 40 points, I just feel like you're risking situations where you just don't get to use it. Whereas there are some other items, for example, like the Standard of Steel, which are going to be used almost every game because, you know, all enemies use Inspired for whatever reason. So there is that. Elysian Fragment on the Order of the Sword. Again, I'm just a little bit worried about it because you do spend a bit of points on it, and I'd kind of prefer to just invest in stuff that keeps that unit alive. Again, Standard of Steel is a good one. Like, anything you could find that just keeps them alive just a little bit longer would be very, very useful. But I'm still enjoying all the shooting units. The Knights, maybe not so much, but I'm looking forward to trying a few different variations of the army list now that we have the Steel Legion on the table. Going to be assembling some more Dwegum as well, so I hope you guys stick around, and of course like, subscribe, leave me a comment, and have a great day.